In her book, Transformation of America, author Cathy O'Brien claims that she was the victim of a mind control program run by the CIA. She claims that George Bush Sr. used ancient magical hand signals to directly control her subconscious mind. She also claims that Bill Clinton was under mind control. In covertly recorded off-air transmissions from the Bush-Clinton presidential election campaign in the 1990s, we can see that Bill Clinton was nothing more than a puppet to the puppet masters which placed him in the White House. Bill Clinton's demeanor seems to be similar to a person who is under a hypnotic trance.
I love him. Can we do any more? Can we do some more? Can we do some more? Can we do some more final touch? Call. We done all call all today.
Lampe, Missouri was a place where I heard George Bush and Bill Clinton talking. From the point of view I had, they certainly were friends, and they didn't recognize any party lines between them. That's something for the, a smoke and mirrors illusion for the public. It's not something they adhere to because they had exactly the same agenda, and that was for bringing in this New World Order. I heard George Bush talking at that time. He was talking to Bill Clinton, and I've since photographically recorded it and wrote it verbatim in our book, that when the American people became disillusioned with Republicans leading them into the New World Order, that Bill Clinton, as a Democrat, was going to be put into the office of president. This was decided in 1984. Actually, I'd heard about it even prior to that, but that, as of 1984, they were already discussing it as an absolute fact.
So I wanted to finish the thought here. That's the one break we have to hit live. It's been around the world, but it's hard to believe we're being watched in 151 countries. Crazy. Ted Turner changed the world. I'm a big fan of yours. He would serve you, Captain. Only surprise. He's ready. What's he got left in life again? After you're elected, think about it. No dope.
That's for sure.
Great guy to work for, too.
Remember that every single man, woman, and child in the state of South Carolina awakens to a freer, safer world because of George Bush. I would remind people that every single morning we all awaken to a safer, freer world because of George Bush. And Nicole, I would remind you and the people of Florence that all of us awaken every single day to a freer, safer world because of George Bush. They themselves awaken every single day to a freer, safer world because of George Bush.
Moscow is in the midst of the last hours of summer.
Brainwashing, hypnosis, and even surgical manipulation of the human brain has all been researched thoroughly by the CIA.
To provide an objective record of a subject's behavior, she's filmed before treatment and again after treatment, and the two films placed side by side. Notice how the subject before treatment, in the picture on the right, holds onto the chair as she moves. Notice the difference in posture, the greater effort required to rise from the chair, the longer time needed to complete the simple task.
He would cut the skin, take the skin flap back, roll it back. He would then literally remove the skull, the top part of the skull. The patient all this time is under a local anesthetic, completely conscious.
From my own point of view, the most unexpected finding was to discover that a mild electrical current applied to the surface of the brain causes a patient to have a memory from his own past sometimes.
Good. Make it 1 volt, please. 1 volt. Yeah. This is 1 volt.
I heard what sounded like an orchestra playing, and I asked the nurse where it was coming from. And she said, "What music?" And I said, "Well, that music." And then it stopped.
Then I stimulated it again, you remember, and asked you about it, and you hummed it. Will you hum it now? You remember it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Da 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 da.
The Soviet secret police and their offspring in Eastern Europe and China have presented the world with a series of public trials at which prisoners, including some Americans, calmly and apparently without coercion made confessions of unbelievable crimes, espionage, sabotage, treason. To Western observers, these confessions have been so bewildering that a belief has grown that the communists have perfected some mysterious, irresistible technique for manipulating human behavior.
Мы пионеры, юные ленинцы. По-ленински жить и трудиться – наша большая мечта. Мы, ребята, гордимся нашим солнечным краем. Городами, полями разбиты, и при слове отчизну.
V obchodních domech Prior z nepřeberné nabídky zboží našeho trhu se vám zatočí hlava.
Wendig. Schnell. Ausdauernd und robust. Ihr zuverlässiger Begleiter, der neue Trabant 601.
Durch den sich bei ihr im Laufe der Jahre immer extremer herausbildenden Hang zum luxuriösen Leben nach westlichem Vorbild wurde ihre ideologische Grundposition später immer mehr aufgeweicht.
Было все на белом свете, люди издавна повторяются. Было, есть и снова будет так.
Будет так, будет так, будет так, будет так. Было, есть и снова будет так.
Будет так.
Будет так.
Будет так.
Будет tak.
Было, есть и снова будет так.
If you sat around a table and you said, right, what we need to do is we need to find some way of getting young people to see the world the way we want them to see it, so that by the time they become adults, they are completely following the reality we want them to believe in. Someone might say, well, they might not have it but you know the ideal thing? What we do is we have a system where we take children away from their parents at least 5 days a week, all day, from about the age of 4 and 5, and we have control of their minds until they're about 17, 18. That would be ideal. Well, of course, that's what happens. It's called the education system.
Yes.
And it's indoctrination. the whole system, because we have two hemispheres of the brain, the left brain, which is about words and this world reality and, you know, the perception of this reality. We have the right brain, which is where you get creativity, inspiration, and connection, and then you've got this corpus callosum, which connects the two. First of all, we use a fraction of our brains. Why is that? And the other thing is that what the system does is it turns out left brain prisoners. They run the system. And it does it by putting information through schools and colleges and universities into the left brain, which it then says at time of an exam, give me all that back, and if you tell me what I've told you well enough to believe, then you'll pass the exam and you'll be very successful. Anyone that takes that information into the right brain and puts their spin on it, or questions it, or sees through it, and puts that in the exam, they are perceived as a disruptive influence in the classroom.
Yes, they are.
And so what happens is, for you to become a doctor, overwhelmingly a politician, a journalist, someone often in industry, all these areas that control the system.
The professions.
The professions.
Yeah.
Lawyers.
Yes.
I mean, on and on we go. You have to have gone through your young life constantly taking information into your left brain and regurgitating it out on exam papers. To become a teacher, you have to go through that process. Then you go through teacher training college, where you're taught how to do it to others, and then you're let loose on the children. Yes. The whole system is run by left brain prisoners. And if you look at the school system, things like music and art that stimulate this side of the brain, the uniqueness, they are constantly cut back in favor of left brain curriculums. And this is systematic. I have to get this over to people. This is not systematic at the level of, you know, people who administer it into reality. It is coldly calculated in the shadowy areas where these concepts first come from.
Yeah.
And they know what they're doing.
Yeah, these examinations, what's happening is that, you know, to fit in, to be part of the so-called in crowd, you have to reconfirm the beliefs of the hierarchy.
Exactly.
The ancient kingdom of Tibet, situated high in the Himalaya mountains. Tibet is a culture based on compassion, totally at odds with the doctrine of the Antichrist. The spiritual and secular leader of Tibet, His Royal Highness, the Dalai Lama, won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989 for his continued policy of non-violent resistance of the communist Chinese government, who illegally took control of Tibet more than 40 years ago. Tibet is being systematically destroyed by America's most favored nation, communist China. Buddhist monks are being slaughtered, and there is wholesale torture of nuns and monks who defy the Chinese military and follow the pacifist, anti-war teachings of the ascended Buddhist masters.
My brother-in-law and I were arrested together and marched around in front of our village. Then the Chinese shot him in the head, and his blood splattered all over me. The Chinese said, "So you call for His Holiness the Dalai Lama and call on America for help. But where are they? Will anyone help you? If you obey China, your path will be smooth. If you don't, watch what happens to these two."
The Tibetan people are suffering immeasurably under the Chinese.
Countless beatings and killings. And though the Chinese say there's freedom of religion, they don't allow us to practice our faith.
남들 총거심으로 한테도 갈래 개민주를 개민주시 비게 종하나 그저 종한 그저서 한테 지신 근데 자와도 슈로 로규단들 세로 한테 갑자기 잘려 경색했어 잘려 걸려 경색
자디게 근데 세다고
자와 대야 동자단들 대라 동자단신 효디절에强제도强제신 동자단도 그런 강글을 짜는데 짜게 여러 근데 강제지가 돼도 단도 되게 너무 붙여요
자데르반 데르로 디종만 니 잘을 줄도 쓰다 니 나서 쉬우셔라 세야 누가 누가라 데디라 도왔다 사들라 줘다요 누가라 어디 사디 데마도 수조세 데마요 자이고를 잡아쉬어래 고간다나도
고 배축스 거나서 된다
에 잡아쉬는데 같이 해줘
잡아쉬는 드네 마람비 수고 찾은 마람비 마람비신 샤라 여러 샤라 tilya kyangja dangna yi shasin kashi ge jawa mi hiyor metadanya pomdir shisi an jile jawa hyusi jig lawa lokyunya do jile tsare tawatin bombutin do jasin mi sum sere da hyur an tine diwa jiya suwa kasa ka lo dangsi jig tsemenana ya tsemenda di chapjen dangsa yorba jawa da dinje gyusi mi sum re jim butaya
sepre 줄바지 다 놀라서래 벤스시 요래 제가 고사요래 그 seple를 제대 sep티스게 개체 시다래 seple를 제대나 나설 배도요래 되게 매지 매동하고가 매당 매지 보고 말다 네네 장대는 도 저다면도 회사 제셔 회사 쇼 사람자 투에 요마래 이제 칼리를 슈를 매지고만 저랑 건하고 제쇼 저랑 된다 말에 그 집에 된다라 도중다래 체질에 야구시다래 엄마 삼루를 제쇼 다야 아가리네 대밭 교래 롤러부 제쇼 그게 낭 말에
The Free Tibet campaign is a worldwide movement of volunteers who wish to highlight the illegal killings and imprisonment of Tibetan people.
Free Tibet!
The Free Tibet campaign displayed flags during the state visit of the Chinese Premier in London. The Free Tibet flags were confiscated by British police officers. The peaceful protesters were often arrested and dragged away for no apparent reason. Some were even assaulted and beaten by British police officers.
I'm not young, haven't got long hair in dreadlocks, and I'm not covered in rings all over the show. I've always felt strongly about Tibet and about what's going on in China on the political front. The fact that they've still got detainees in prison who were at Tiananmen Square 10 or 11 years ago, that is bloody awful, and something has to be done. And I think in a case like this where the government won't do anything, it's always down to the people to do something instead.
Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Tibet!
The police officers carrying out these illegal arrests are mostly members of Freemasonry. Freemasonry is more than just a secret society. Freemasonry is actually a religion. Freemasons pray to a tri-pantheon god, one facet of which is the warmongering Baal deity. Freemasonry is the most popular occult religion amongst police officers, judges, and barristers such as Mr. Tony Blair. The spiritual master and head of state in Tibet is the Dalai Lama, who has written many excellent books promoting the benefits of meditation and compassion. Even though the Dalai Lama is a man of peace, he speaks good English and is recognized for his statesmanship. He was refused an audience with Queen Elizabeth of Great Britain. However, the British royal family, who have members that are active Freemasons, greeted the leader of the murdering communist Chinese government with a full state ceremony. Clements Kuby and Michael Emley are two filmmakers who have made excellent documentaries about the tyrannical genocide in Tibet. It is clear from these films that Kurt Weidemann of the Washington State Department utterly denies the evidence of genocide against Tibet.
Official U.S. policy has consistently regarded Tibet as a part of China, although an autonomous region within China.
My crime was that in 1959, I signed a statement saying that Tibet was an independent country. For that, I spent 17 years in Chinese prisons and concentration camps.
We have no evidence at this point that the Chinese government is engaged in any policy or in any actions aimed at wiping out the Tibetans, or in short, reflecting a policy of genocide either against the Tibetan people themselves or against their culture.
I mean, Tibetans are no longer wearing Tibetan clothes. Tibetans are not talking Tibetan. All the Chinese wear Chinese. It is the blue uniform, everybody. And the monasteries are no longer is a monastery, and no monks are there.
They used to have mobile clinics which would go from village to village and just get the women together and get them sterilized. Or even women who were pregnant in their 9th month were made to abort their children.
At one point in this interview, we see that his mind control programming breaks down.
What about self-determination for Tibetans?
On the BBC Newsnight programme, we see a Chinese government minister also displaying signs of heavy mind control.
Can you explain to us on the political situation why there has been no response from your government to the Dalai Lama's proposal in Strasbourg of nearly 3 years ago now about an arrangement between him and fellow Tibetans and your government?
In 1988 in Strasbourg, the Dalai Lama proposed to make Tibet a democratic political entity governed by itself, which maintains relations of alliance with China. And what does it mean?
Well, it's suggesting, he's suggesting that they be given autonomy in internal affairs, that they give to you
I just
control.
Quote what he said in his proposal. It's nothing new. We think it's nothing new, but another version of the statement that China holds only suzerainty, not sovereignty over Tibet. We heard of this kind of clamoring at the beginning of this century in order to divide China. That phrase also means that the Dalai Lama advocates Tibetan independence. And we have repeatedly said that China's sovereignty over Tibet can never be denied. Neither independence nor semi-independence or disguised independence will be tolerated. Thirdly, the Dalai Lama's proposal favored transforming Tibet into a peace zone or a buffer state among the great powers through demilitarization or neutrality. But a peace zone or neutral zone involves the problem of state sovereignty and international safeguards. So it is out of the question for a country to establish in one of its regions a peace zone or a neutral zone with its neighbors.